All right. Hare Krishna. My name is Pavamana, and I was initiated by His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada in the early 70s. So I've been asked to give some talk on the Sri Isopanisad, which is given to us, translated by Srila Prabhupada. And all of the literatures that Srila Prabhupada has given us are coming from the Vedas, the ancient Vedas of India. And since the Vedas are extremely voluminous, there's something for everyone. If you want to enjoy in this world, there's information how to enjoy. Srila Prabhupada also said that somewhere there is a mantra to make carpets fly. So the Vedic literature is like a owner's manual for the material world. But somewhere in the Vedas, there's information about the real story, the backstory, where we came from, who we are, what we're doing here, and the goal of life. Okay. And information about the Supreme Being, better known as God, or we call Krishna. So the Sri Isopanisad gives us information about the Supreme Absolute Truth, which in the end is nothing but God. We are not God. We are part of God, but we are not God. If you take a drop of water from the ocean, it's like the ocean, but it's not the ocean. Okay, so simultaneously it is one with the ocean and not the ocean. So the Sri Isopanisad gives us information about the absolute truth. So I'm going to read some verses from the Sri Isopanisad. This is called the Invocation. Translation. The personality of Godhead is perfect and complete. And because he is completely perfect, all emanations from him, such as this phenomenal world, are perfectly equipped as complete wholes. Whatever is produced of the complete whole is also complete in itself. Because he is the complete whole, even though so many complete units emanate from him, he remains the complete balance. Okay, I'm going to read the explanation. The purport. The complete whole, or the Supreme Absolute Truth, is the complete personality of Godhead. Realization of impersonal Brahman, or of Paramatma, the super soul, is incomplete realization of the absolute complete. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is Satchidananda Vigraha, and the impersonal Brahman realization is the realization of his Sat feature, or his aspect of eternity. And Paramatma, or super soul realization, is the realization of his Sat and Chit features, his aspects of eternity and knowledge. Realization of the personality of Godhead, however, is realization of all the transcendental features, Sat, Chit, and Ananda, bliss. When one realizes the Supreme Person, he realizes these aspects in complete form, Vigraha. Thus, the complete whole is not formless. If he were formless, or if he were any less than his creation in any way, he could not be complete. The complete must contain everything both within and beyond our experience. Otherwise, he cannot be complete. The complete whole, the personality of Godhead, has immense potencies, all of which are as complete as he is. Thus, in this phenomenal or material world, is also complete in itself. The 24 elements of which this material universe is a temporary manifestation are arranged to produce everything necessary for the maintenance and subsistence of this universe. No other unit in the universe need make an extraneous effort to try to maintain the universe. The universe functions on its own time scale, which is fixed by the energy of the complete whole, And when this time schedule is complete, this temporary manifestation will be annihilated by the complete arrangement of the complete. All facilities are given to the complete units, namely the living beings, to enable them to realize the complete whole. All forms of incompletion are experienced due to incomplete knowledge of the complete whole. The human form of life is a complete manifestation of the consciousness of the living being, and it is obtained after evolving through 8,400,000 species of life in the cycle of birth and death. If the living entity does not realize his completeness within the complete whole in this human life, which is benedicted with full consciousness, and is again, he loses the chance to realize his completeness and is put again into the evolutionary cycle by the law of material nature. Because we do not know that there is complete arrangement in nature for our maintenance, we make efforts to utilize the resources of nature to create a so-called complete life of sense gratification, sense enjoyment. Because the living entity cannot enjoy the life of the senses without being dovetailed to the complete whole, the misleading life of sense enjoyment is considered illusion. The hand of the body is a complete unit only as long as it is attached to the complete body. When the hand is severed from the body, it may appear like a hand, but actually has none of the potencies of a hand. Similarly, living beings are parts and parcels of the complete whole, and if they are severed from the complete whole, the illusory representation of completeness cannot fully satisfy them. The completeness of human life can only be realized when one engages in the service of the complete whole. All services in this world, whether social, political, communal, international, or even interplanetary, will remain incomplete until they are dovetailed with the complete whole. When everything is dovetailed with the complete whole, the attached parts and parcels also become complete in themselves. That's just the first verse. So basically, we are thinking that we are something that we're not. We're playing a kind of masquerade game. I'm wearing this body and considering it myself, and someone is looking at me considering that they're seeing me, but they're seeing my body. So I'm the person inside looking out. I'm the person looking through the eyes. I have these cameras called eyes and I have these microphones called ears. And there's a, voice box, a, megaphone, and I'm making sounds, right? So I almost feel like that. You've seen those videos of these funny videos on YouTube where they're feeding the dog's face is there, and putting the food in the mouth like that, and it's very humorous. So it's kind of like that. We are not what we appear to be. Okay, there's a famous song. So the point is that there's something that we don't know, that we should know because we're human beings. And unfortunately, in this age, we're not getting that information. At least we're not getting it in school. Maybe in India, but in the Western countries, we just don't know. It's, just like the advertising, grab all the gusto you can, because when you're done, you're gone. And never mind, there's no such thing as karma. There's no such thing as repercussions for this. Just go for it, right? If it feels good, do it. Dogs run free. Why can't we? But human life is a very, very precious opportunity. I couldn't stress that more. Srila Prabhupada described so many times. This human life is very, very important. We've been through 8,400,000 species to get here. Okay. Sometimes one has a good position, maybe is very famous, maybe wealthy, got a good education, born in a good family, and sometimes not. But when you have the human form, we have the one opportunity to find out what's it all about, Alfie. What are we doing here? Is there a purpose of life? Maybe we think the purpose of life is to enjoy ourselves. actually, we are looking for happiness. That's part of our nature. Okay. Where do we get that propensity from? There's somebody, and we call him God or Krishna, who has created the whole situation. The whole situation is created by Krishna to fulfill a particular purpose. Now, if I make something, right, things just don't exist. They don't just pop out of nothingness. If you create something, there's a purpose for your creation, even if it's just pure fun. Maybe you get a piece of clay and muck around with it, and your purpose is to enjoy some kind of interaction with matter. There's always a purpose. So sometimes if I make something, someone else may come along and take that thing and use it for a different purpose, right? Maybe you need to, turn a screw, but all you've got is a chisel. Well, a chisel will work, but you'll dull it if you use it for that. So there's a purpose for this world, but we have repurposed it to this idea that now it's meant for our enjoyment, separate from the Supreme Being, of course, because that's the MO in this place. Okay. This world is like a sandbox. We come here to live separately and not have to consider a relationship with God. We're AWOL, absent without leave. We've left the spiritual world where everyone loves and serves God to come here to become God ourselves. That's the motive. So more or less, we are trying to imitate Krishna, God. Everyone serves Krishna. He's the proprietor. He's the enjoyer. And so we are trying to do the same thing. And we may not be even thinking of it that way. I'm just, I popped out of my mom and I'm here I am, I want to enjoy the world, and ultimately, the biggest enjoyment is sex. So, naturally we run after that. And then we become entangled in all the activities that you have to do in order to create that situation. So life goes on as we look here and there and everywhere and anywhere for some type of enjoyment. And whether, we become a big man, we try to, become a star, a sports star, a movie star, rock star, or whatever it is, even if it's, to become a philanthropist or whatever it may be, if there's no connection with the Supreme Being, it's all an illusion. In the Vedas, like I said before, there are descriptions of worship of different gods so that you can get what you want. So someone wants to have a beautiful wife, someone wants money, right? Someone wants this, someone wants that. If you want to become very healthy, you can worship the earth. You want a beautiful wife, you can worship the goddess Uma. And so many things are there in the Vedas, but Krishna does not recommend it. He condemns it. Because he says that all these things are temporary. They don't make you happy. In the end, you'll find yourself very frustrated. And life is very short. Even if you live 100 years, eventually death comes along to take it all away. So what was the benefit? Why not try for something that you haven't tried for before? And that is liberation from this world. To find out, is there something beyond this? I remember being in college. I was I went to SanDiego State. I was in the engineering program. but I was very lonely, very unhappy. And I remember sitting in my room and I was actually crying. I said, this can't be it. If you want to understand physics, that the spectrum of light is a very small sliver of the whole electromagnetic spectrum. So what else is out there that we're not seeing? So how are you going to know? Because our senses are imperfect. There's so many things that we don't see. We don't see radio waves. We don't really know what's going on. We have effects. You wrap a wire around something, or you connect it to a battery, and there's something is going on in a circuit, that we utilize to make television or internet or whatever it is. But we really don't know because we don't have the senses to understand what's going on. And there's a reason for it. I'm getting a little bit, believe me, I'm going to get around to it when I finish my explanation. Suppose you go to a movie. Do you want to see the guy behind the camera? Do you want to watch the guy holding the boom with the mic on the end of it? Do you want to see all the people in the audience, the extras, and everyone sitting around? I won't describe what it's like, but it would be very boring, and it would take you out of the scene. It would take you away from the narrative. So they don't show you these things until the end when there's some funny outtakes or something like that, But while you're watching the movie, you don't want to see what's going on behind the scenes. So when we're living our life, we don't see the backstory. If you watch a movie, there's so many things going on. There are writers and producers and people who build the sets and arrange the whole thing, financing, advertising, and all these kinds of things. There's a big backstory to these movies that we watch. Well, what to speak of life? You think it just everything happened automatically because by chance? Did that cake that you baked happen by chance? You didn't do that. Well, you didn't do it. Of course, there's somebody behind it, but we don't want to see because it reminds us of what the actual situation, which is that there's a God and we're subordinate to him. And it's a very personal thing. We just have this thing about being controlled. We don't want to be controlled. We don't want people to tell us what to do. But in the end, we're not happy. And so we have to backtrack and go, okay, Uncle. Now we have to go back and see, why am I suffering? Why am I not happy? I dropped out of college after a couple of years, and I was living in Westwood, nice part of town, doing everything I thought would make me happy, and I wasn't happy, and I didn't know why. And one day, Hare Krishna came to my door and, started preaching, and he said, happiness is always off the end of your fingertips. Yeah. So we're all looking for happiness, but we're not getting it. Okay. The reason is, just like in this book, we are part of the complete whole, but we have distanced ourselves. We're now over here in our sandbox trying to play king of the hill and neglecting the big elephant in the room, which is there's a supreme being here. And he's arranging all of these things for us. But at the same time, there's an illusion going on. There's like this masquerade party. Everyone's looking at each other, making, enemies over here and friends over there. I like this, I don't like that, right? Hiding behind this mask, which is our false ego. We get this false ego when we come here, right? Which means we forget who we really are. We've forgotten that we're in a masquerade. We're thinking that I am this mask, and this mask is this body. So as we're moving through life, we're trying this and trying that, right? Someone's got this talent or that talent, and that's all well and good. That's okay. We have a particular nature. We have certain desires. But what we need to do is dovetail those things to serve Krishna, or the Supreme Being, the absolute truth, the complete whole. As we move through this world, as human beings, it is our birthright and our duty to understand our position, who we are, and to engage ourselves in the service of the absolute truth. Okay? That is devotional service. And the first part of devotional service is hearing. Just like if you're watching this broadcast, look in the mirror right now and say, thank you. Thank yourself for inquiring, what is this that these people are talking about? What is this world? There's some information here. Let me see, maybe something here that I can get, that I can improve myself. Okay? I'm not offering any sense gratification. I'm not handing you anything. But there's some information about life that we all need to know. And that information is that we are tiny servants of God and that we need to serve God. So the first thing is you have to hear about it. Okay? Well, am I just talking off the top of my head? Where did I get this information from? How dare I sit here and pontificate about things when I'm just like you or anybody else? What gives me the right to say what I'm saying? The fact is that we're getting this information from a disciplic line, which has been given to us and coming down from higher sources. Those who have been on the path and realized the information and is passing it down without changing it. That's all. We're not making anything up. We're not experimenting. We're not, seat of the pants, pulling ourselves up by the bootstraps. Has anybody ever pulled themselves up by the bootstraps? I'd like to see it. It's not done that way. You have a teacher. You have someone who has more knowledge than you, more realization than you, and on the subject that you're interested in. If you want to learn physics, you go to a physics teacher, right? You have to go to someone who can teach you. So we have to find a guru. We have to find someone who is coming in this line of succession, not just, do it yourself, self-made guru, but someone who had a guru himself and who has realized the knowledge and is passing it down. And in the present day, Srila Prabhupada is our spiritual master. And those who are following Srila Prabhupada can become a spiritual master themselves and pass on the knowledge to their disciples. The only thing is that the person who is becoming a guru must be qualified, and he has to be authorized. So Srila Prabhupada has presented the most important parts of the Vedas. All of this information in Vedic knowledge is coming down through thousands and millions of years, actually. 5,000 years ago, the sages looked into the future and said, people aren't going to be able to remember. So they invented writing called Sanskrit. So now the Sanskrit language is pretty much dead. 99.9999% of people don't know Sanskrit. Only a few scholars in the world. But Srila Prabhupada has translated the most important information and is giving us the Srimad Bhagavatam, the beautiful story of the personality of Godhead, and the Bhagavad Gita. Bhagavad Gita, the song of God, spoken by Krishna himself. So from this information, we are getting from the disciplic succession being passed down through thousands and thousands and thousands and millions of years. And in the Bhagavad Gita itself, the same information was given to the sun god millions of years ago. And 5,000 years ago, Krishna started another succession because in the course of time, things had gotten lost. So 500 years ago in India, there was an incarnation of Krishna named Lord Chaitanya. And Lord Chaitanya inaugurated the chanting of the Hare Krishna mantra as the method of self-realization in this age. Chant the names of Krishna. In fact, in the Bible, it says, hallowed be thy name. So the name of God and the chanting of the name of God is the recommended process for cleansing our heart to understand our actual position as servants of Krishna. So first is hearing and then chanting. So we have the chanting process. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So these 16 names are recommended for this age. And in fact, there is no other way. There is no other way. There is no other way than to chant the holy name, chant the holy name, chant the holy name. There is no other process for this age. Now, we've heard of yogas and different kinds of yoga and meditation, and there are other methods in previous times that were recommended then. But this age, we were recommended to simply chant the names of God. In fact, Lord Chaitanya, who is none other than God himself, had a guru. And his guru told him, you can't study scripture. They were criticizing because he wasn't studying scripture. He was simply chanting Hare Krishna. So he told them, said, my guru told me I'm a fool, that I have no business studying Vedanta scripture, which is quite complicated and elevated. He said, you can't study scripture, just chant Hare Krishna. Of course, he was God. It was an instructive situation. So in this age, chanting the holy names of God is the most important thing that we can do. And we have scriptures translated by His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada, the guru of the Hare Krishna movement, and being distributed throughout the world in languages in every continent, in every place in the world. And the purpose of these scriptures is to get us to understand why we should chant Hare Krishna. Because the chanting of the names of God is the most important thing that we do. Okay, that's why we chant on the street. And the books are actually a kind of recorded chanting. But it's all meant to help us understand who we are. Because as we cleanse our heart by chanting, that's part of the process. The process and the end is basically the same process. We chant Hare Krishna, which means, oh Lord, oh energy of the Lord, please engage me in your service. Okay, so by doing that, we are begging to be engaged in some kind of loving activity. But at the end, it doesn't stop. It's not that we become God. There is a very popular philosophy propagated by a different organization, which is very popular in the North County, that we are worshiping God and we are chanting and we are doing bhajan and we are doing all these things, but ultimately we are God. Well, that's not true. We're not God. We never were, and we never will be. The point is that devotional service continues after we die. After you go to the spiritual world, that's what everyone is doing. And if you look at what people do, and not just people, animals, every living being is a servant, right? You have maybe a fox or some animal, and they have a litter. And they're serving their litter. Everyone is, and everything, the characteristic of living things is that they serve. What politician is going to say, I'm not going to serve you? No, they want your vote with the promise that I'll serve you. right? But they really want people to serve them. But the fact is, you can't get away from service. That's the point. So we're missing serving God. We're missing serving Krishna. And that's the origin of our problem. We're serving everybody else and everything else except God, right? We serve our society, we serve our family, we serve our senses, we serve, our political party, we serve, humanity, whatever. Serve, serve, serve. But no one's completely happy, right? Because we're missing the point. We're missing our origin. That we it's like cutting ourselves off from the tree. Or like Prabhupada gives the example of the hand. If the hand thinks I'm going to enjoy the food, it isn't going to work very well because the hand isn't designed to do that. This hand is designed to feed the stomach, right? If the hand doesn't give the food to the stomach, the hand eventually will dry up. It won't be able to work. And there's a funny story in that connection that once upon a time, the senses decided, the arms and legs and eyes and ears and everything, they all decided, who is this stomach? This guy is lazy. It sits around all day, just sits there, and everybody's, putting things in the stomach. This is not fair. What are we going to do? Somebody says, well, I think we should go on strike. So they went on strike. Things are getting boring. And after a while, they're starting feeling a little weak. So, hey, we need a meeting here. Are you weak? Yeah, man, I'm weak. I feel like sitting around all day. I'm hungry. Yeah, me too. Right? So they decided, you know what? We made a big mistake. As much as we don't like this stomach guy, man, we got to feed him because we're starving. So they went back to work. So the souls in this world have avoided serving Krishna. And we're hankering after happiness, looking here and there and everywhere, trying to find why I'm not getting happiness. We do all kinds of things, kooky things, kinky things, homosex, this, that, trying to find the happiness that's actually within us. There's a deer called the musk deer. And the musk deer has glands in their body that produces a particularly pleasant scent. So they smell it, right? And they run here and there looking for the source of the scent that's coming from themselves, right? So we're trying to find happiness in all these different ways, any way you can possibly think. I'll become a guru, I'll have followers, I'll become a rock star, I'll have so many followers, or I'll make a lot of money, or I'll be the president of the United States, or whatever it might be. We're trying to find happiness, but we're not getting it. And even if you get it, it's not satisfying because we've missed the point, right? We had a famous, unfortunate comedian some years ago committed suicide. He could make everyone laugh. Everyone loved him because he made everyone laugh. But he himself was not happy. Actually, he had some connection with the devotees. So he committed suicide because he couldn't find the happiness. People become successful, and on their deathbed, they're like, I've got everything. Now what? Now what? They don't know. They never inquired. And now it's too late. We have a certain window of opportunity in this human form of life. And if we blow it, there are a lot of species of life that we could be put into. Human life is not the only form of life out there, right? So the world is a very dangerous and precarious place. We simply don't know. We don't know what we don't know. We just know I want to be happy. So here comes Srila Prabhupada. Here comes the Hare Krishna movement. Some very strange-looking people in the Western mind, chanting some weird mantra, and they're happy. How can they be happy? They don't have jobs, right? They're out there distributing literature. They don't work. They have cars. They have everything, and they're happy. And they think we must be on drugs. We must. Well, how can you possibly be happy without some form of sense gratification? The truth is, they get happiness from within. By connecting with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, we become happy. Okay, just like throwing a fish back in the water. Okay, fish can't be happy unless they're in the water. That's what they're designed to do, swim in the water. So we're like fish out of water. We're looking for happiness in all the wrong places. And not only that, inventing ways to be happy that are making us miserable and ruining our future. Okay, it's just like if you have laws, you drive on the, if you drive on the left side of the street, you'll get a ticket. Well, I didn't know. Well, you're driving a car, you have to know. So in the human form of life is very, very important because we've been given instructions. Now, you don't have to abide by them, right? Just like you don't have to abide by the law, but at your risk, if you don't know the law and you break the law, well, sorry, the law will still act. So material nature, the world we live in, is full of illusion. There's all kinds of, enticements, illicit sex and intoxication, gambling, all, you name it, eating meat, right? Doing all these sinful things. We didn't know they were sinful, right? I didn't know eating meat was sinful, but we have to know because we are human beings. And the scriptures are there to tell us what's right and wrong. Unfortunately, there are many scriptures of the world that don't give us this information. In fact, they even encourage eating meat. So we're in a very precarious position. But now, Srila Prabhupada has come, the Hare Krishna movement is here. We have all this information. And if you actually take part in the Hare Krishna movement by chanting or reading the literature, coming to the temple, associating with devotees, and especially chanting Hare Krishna, it doesn't cost anything. And the benefit is immense. I remember when this young man came to my door, he said, if you chant 5 minutes a day, you'll see a difference at the end of a week. And he was right. And if you try it, if you haven't tried chanting before, chanting the Hare Krishna mantra actually puts us in touch with the real enjoyment that's naturally within us. It's not something we're stuffing somebody, stuffing something down their throat or whatever. Being happy is natural. Being unhappy is not natural. So by chanting Hare Krishna, we get everything. You get happiness, right? You get satisfaction, and you don't have to give up what you're doing. In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna is telling his friend Arjuna, who was a warrior, he said, Arjuna, don't stop fighting. Don't run off and try to go to the forest to meditate. You have your duty to do. But at the same time, keep your mind fixed on me, meaning God. Okay, Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He's God himself. So there's a higher purpose to life than simply running after, temporary enjoyment. And that's what the Hare Krishna movement is all about. So unfortunately, I'm talking to my my broadcast channel to the rest of the world. Take the time to find out what this Hare Krishna movement is all about. Okay, it's very unusual looking. You have people unlike me. I used to have a shaved head. Now I work outside. I have a job. But the Hare Krishna movement is the answer to all the problems of the world. Everything is contained in this ISKCON, the Hare Krishna movement. the chanting of the holy names. We have association at the temple to learn about what self-realization is all about. We learn about Krishna and our relationship with Krishna and how this material world works and how we can become liberated. Unfortunately, many of the religions of the world encourage, and in fact, when there's some material success, oh, hallelujah. Well, you may get some success, you may not, but that's not the goal of life. The goal of life is to reconnect with God. That's called yoga. And what we practice is called Bhakti. It's very easy and it's very enjoyable. So it's now 7:30. I don't know if I'm supposed to keep going or not, but I wish there was some way that I could ask for questions. But unfortunately, there's no one on the Zoom call. It's just being broadcast. So I want to offer my obeisances to my spiritual master, His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada. Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namane. Namaste Saraswati Deve Gaurvani Pacharane Nirvasesa Sunyavadi Paschatale Satarane. So
I have a request. If you want, you can go ahead.
Keep going?
Yes, because we started late. We started almost 20 minutes late.
So we can keep going. Oh, that's fine. So the point is that we are trying to find something, anything, to give us what we want, which is enjoyment. But we're not finding it because we're looking in the wrong place. Okay. So thousands of years ago, the sages saw into the future, and they saw that people would not be able to remember because previously, 5,000 years ago and before, people's minds were very sharp. And if they heard something once, they would remember for the rest of their life. Nowadays, if you ask me, what's my name? Or if I ask you, what's your name? 2 seconds later, I won't remember. How do we get through life? So they wrote books. So thousands of years ago, there was a literary incarnation of God named Vyasadeva. So Vyasadeva wrote down all of the Vedas into the Sanskrit language. Okay? It is called the language of the gods. It actually rhymes. It has meter. It's a very, very elaborate and beautiful language. Here's a mantra, number 4. And there's the Sanskrit, the Devanagari script. I can't read that, but it's transliterated. And so it can be pronounced. So mantra 4. Anejarekam manaso jabiyo nanadeva apnavan purvam arshat tadhavato nyan atyeti tishtat tasminapo matarishva dadhati. So each one of those words has a meaning, and there is a word synonym for each one of those words and a translation. Not only translation, but a purport, an explanation by His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada. Okay, coming into cyclic succession, he is explaining things in English from the original Sanskrit, although English is not his first language. So the translation is, although fixed in his abode, the personality of Godhead is swifter than the mind and can overcome all others running. The powerful demigods cannot approach him. Although in one place he controls those who supply the air and rain, he surpasses all in excellence. That's what that mantra means. Then he explains in the purport about that, what that mantra means. How is that to be understood in the modern context? So Srila Prabhupada has created a society for Krishna consciousness, called the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, called ISKCON. So ISKCON was devised by Srila Prabhupada to help propagate and give a place of congregation, of association, so that we can engage in devotional activities with the end of realizing ourselves. That's what the Hare Krishna movement is all about. We're not after money. We're not after fame. In fact, Srila Prabhupada himself, although he created in only 12 years, he had over 10,000 disciples, over 100 centers. When he passed away, he had over 100 centers. He had schools and farms, and he wrote over 60 books, 400 pages each. While we slept, he translated. He only slept maybe 3 hours, 4 hours at most a day. And he had more energy than any of us who were only in our 20s, and he was in his 70s. So Srila Prabhupada single-handedly brought from India the entire culture which existed thousands of years ago, all throughout the world. What we see in India today, the caste system and other things, are simply a remnant of a former civilization, which was all over the world. We talk about, one world order. They had a one world order. And the center of the seat of power was in India. And you can still go to the palace where they ruled the world from that place. There were other kings, but they would all offer homage to the rulers of the world in India. So Srila Prabhupada brought this ancient civilization, which has been lost over thousands of years, and transplanted it from India into the West, starting in America. Something that is inconceivable, something that no one would even have thought of doing. His godbrothers, those who were left behind when he came by himself with no money, he had printed some books by himself, collected the money to print them, wrote them, print them, and bring to the West and start the Hare Krishna movement when he was about 70 years old. It is inconceivable. And his godbrothers, when he actually began his society and attracted some followers, he went back to India and they tried to discredit him. So what Srila Prabhupada did was bold. He actually brought the Vedic ancient civilization, brought it here, and implanted it in the Western countries. Inconceivable. And the way he did it was to write books and to publish the books and distribute the books so that people in general can begin the process of self-realization. That's the whole point. That's the whole purpose of the Hare Krishna movement. Like I said, we're not after money. I spent 15 years in temples all over the world. I didn't have a job. I didn't have any money. I didn't own anything except what I was wearing. And I was completely celibate. Personally, I had no intent to marry. But that's my own personal case. But there are people throughout the world who are married, have families, do outside work. Right now, I got married and I have a business. But we can all do whatever we're doing, but add this self-realization to our life. That's the whole point. Arjuna, if you understand the Bhagavad Gita, had to fight a war. And Krishna, the Supreme Person, the personality of Godhead, agreed to be his chariot driver. So at the beginning of the conversation of Krishna and Arjuna decided, I don't want to fight. And Krishna was encouraging, no, you have to fight. That's your duty. Some people say that the real meaning of Bhagavad Gita is simply to do your duty. That's only part of it. Our duties are given to us by God. If you have a certain tendency, then there's a certain occupation you should be doing. If you try to do some occupation you're not suited for, you'll be unhappy, or you won't be able to do it very well. In the modern age, everyone's a square peg in a round hole. We have people who are unqualified taking big positions in government without any training. Don't get me started. I'm not going to go down that road. But the point is that there are certain activities which are needed in human society. You have people who are working class. You have people who are mercantile class, who produce things and grow food. You have a administrative class and warriors and statesmen. And you have a very small intellectual class. And even if you don't organize them, those kind of people are out there. And so during the educational process, it should be apparent who should be trained to do what. We send people to the colleges, right? Oh, you have to go to college to get a good job. They get out of college with a big debt, and they can't get a job. And they're really not suited for it in many cases. People are doing things they're not qualified to do. So the whole society is in a chaos because we've lost sight of the real culture. And that's what Srila Prabhupada was trying to do. He was not complete because this, what we call Varnashram system, was not yet implemented. It was kind of an emergency situation. Okay. So these literatures that we're distributing, the Sri Isopanisad, Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, and other literatures, are all meant to help us understand who we are and to engage in serving Krishna, engage in the activities that we are bound to do as human beings. It doesn't mean we give up our occupation during the day. It doesn't mean we give up our family life. But what we have to give up is the idea that sense gratification is going to make me happy, and doing anything and everything without realizing that there are some activities that should not be done. Okay. When I first started coming to the temple, I was smoking a lot of marijuana. Okay. Joining the temple, I had to give that up. We're also strict vegetarians. I wasn't a vegetarian at the time. So gradually, I had to realize that these things weren't going to help me. These things were detrimental to what I was trying to attain. And so I'd try a little of this and try a little of that, and I realized I'm at a junction. I have to reevaluate what I'm doing. That I either have to go one way or the other. So I had to gradually wean myself off of smoking marijuana. And as soon as the devotee explained to me why I should be vegetarian, from that moment on, I never ate meat, ever. I guess I'm still here, but I used to eat a lot of meat. So there are some things that if you're getting a little serious, then we have to inquire, okay, how can I move along? How can I take the next step? Okay. So we have to think about, okay, what are we doing? What am I doing that might be interfering or slowing down my progress? Okay. Now, some people are in the position, they're not married, they may be able to live in an ashram, live in the temple. And that is very welcome. It is austere. You have to give up certain things, but it's a very blissful life. Very, very blissful, I can tell you. But if we're married or you have some other idea, that's okay. Okay. If you're going to have a family, then you should make your family members into devotees. You should try to help them in self-realization. Okay. So that's the whole point. We want people to become devotees of Krishna or God. Now, if you have some other religion or some other type of faith, that's okay too. But you have to follow what the faith is telling you to do. Unfortunately, some of the preachers from other religions don't follow themselves. And so it's hard for people to have faith when they see the people who are propagating it aren't doing what they say. Okay, so the one thing about Krishna consciousness is that we have a higher taste. If I simply, if I know that illicit sex is wrong, okay, I can try to look the other way. But unless I have something better, eventually it's going to come back to that. Okay, so we have to have something better. We have to have a taste. We have to have something that's going to fulfill us rather than running after sense gratification, of which, of course, the top one is sex. So chanting Hare Krishna and reading this literature and associating with devotees and offering your food to God before you eat it and not eating meat and not intoxicating yourself, you'll actually begin to taste something better, something higher. And that's what I experienced when I was first coming to the temple, that I discovered that if I chanted, I felt really good, whereas formerly I was very depressed. So there must be something to this. But then when I, smoked some marijuana, I came down. Oh, I can't be doing both. I have to choose. So we have to experiment. We have to give a little bit of faith. Okay, somebody's telling me to chant Hare Krishna. Okay, what's the harm? I used to chant in my car because I didn't want anybody to know that's what I was doing. Okay, because at that time in early 70s, it wasn't exactly very popular. So I didn't want anybody to know. So I chanted with the tune from the musical Hair. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. And I chant that in my car. And after a little while, I started feeling pretty good. I said, there's really something to this, right? So we have to have a little bit of faith. You have to start, okay, let me try. I'll give it a shot, right? There's no harm and there's no loss. Okay, and you don't have to pay any money. It's not like you have to have a mantra, pay for a mantra or anything like that. You simply try the chanting. And you'll find that as long as you don't, subvert the process by, doing things that are harming or holding you back, you'll find that there's really something to it. And you'll find in the beginning, Krishna will really be there for you. You'll find things, amazing things, magical things start happening in your life. Unbelievable. Maybe some things that you're struggling with, you might have a few, events. Maybe your girlfriend might decide to go with somebody else, and other things, they might pull the rug a little bit, and you realize, well, I kind of need to get closer to Krishna. I might have to move in the temple, or I might have to become more serious about Krishna consciousness. There were many of us experienced those kinds of things. So sometimes when you become a devotee, things happen, and sometimes wonderful things happen. And just about the time I was coming around the temple, George Harrison came out with the Bangladesh album, and they were playing that Hare Krishna mantra on the local radio station. And it was reassuring to find somebody like George Harrison who was into it. It's like, oh, well, if he's into it, it must be cool, right? And so many things like that happened. It's like it's a magical period. So my humble request is give it a try. Chant the holy names of Krishna. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Maybe you need to listen to that song, My Sweet Lord. That has the mantra in it. There's a film out about the founder of the Hare Krishna movement. If you haven't seen that film, it tells a lot of stories about people who met Prabhupada and what he's all about, what an amazing person he was. And you find out all kinds of amazing information about Srila Prabhupada and how he came here and before he came, and the significance, the very profound significance of what he actually did in only 12 years. He circled the globe 14 times. If you've ever done some extensive traveling, it is very, very difficult. So he's a pretty amazing person. So I don't know if I'm supposed to keep going. Hey, Tapas, am I still on?
Yes, you are still on. There are 11 people who are hearing you.
Oh, good. So, like I say, I wish I could ask for questions, but there's nobody on the other end of the Zoom. This is going into the YouTube. But I'm very glad that my life, I was able to join the Hare Krishna people. Believe me, I had no intent. I had no intent of joining the Hare Krishna movement. But in my life, I found that I wasn't happy. And by chanting the holy names of Krishna and coming to the temple and associating with devotees, I actually found something. And these people were sincere. They'd look you straight in the eye. They weren't asking anything for themselves, and just begging you to read some literature and chant Hare Krishna. And so in the course of time, I gave up what I was doing, and I was able to move in. After a few months, I found myself in India. I was sent to Bombay, and they were trying to build a temple in Juhu Beach. So I think most of the audience, maybe even in SanDiego, would be akin to trying to start a temple in La Jolla Shores, basically in the 1940s or the 1950s, where nothing's developed. In Bombay at the time, this area of Bombay was the same kind of thing. It was a very exclusive area. There were some hotels there, but the land that we got was not developed at all. And it was very difficult. It was like going on a long camping trip. So it was a lot of struggle. But a few years ago, I went back, and they had built a magnificent temple in Juhu Beach on the shore in Bombay. And now that real estate is the most expensive real estate on the planet. In India, of all places, the most expensive real estate on the whole planet. And that's because Krishna lives there. And I saw how much people were devoted, would come to the Krishna temple. My business is I'm a professional piano tuner. And I've met Indian people in my clientele that used to live there. And they grew up around that temple. So there have been many amazing things that have happened in the Hare Krishna movement over the years. Building temples. We have a beautiful temple in Mayapur. When I was there in 1972, they had one building. Now they have a whole city. So it's been very exciting in my life, just to share, that I had the opportunity. I wasn't a big mover and shaker. I was just, fly on the wall. But I've seen a lot of things, and I had some association with His divine grace on many different occasions. The first time I saw him was in the holiest town in the world, Vrindavan, in the holiest temple, in the courtyard of the Radha Damodar temple in Vrindavan. He was giving lectures there. That's the first time I saw him. And my realization was that the books that we read and hearing him speak was the same thing. So even though it was wonderful to be with Srila Prabhupada, just imagine if you were a Christian, if you could have the association of Jesus in the flesh. Can you imagine what great fortune that would be? So we had someone in our midst, Srila Prabhupada, who accomplished thousands of times more than Jesus was able to. And I'm not putting him down at all. But Srila Prabhupada was able to accomplish thousands of times more. Jesus had maybe a dozen disciples, and Srila Prabhupada had over 10,000. And that's just getting started. So it was wonderful to have the association of his divine grace. I saw him in different situations. I went with the devotees to the home of the richest family in India, the Birla family. If you're an Indian, you know who the Birlas are. So I was able to go to their home. They had a lunch engagement. So Srila Prabhupada was a perfect guest. He would talk with people. He could talk to anybody on any subject. Perfect guest, very congenial, very sweet. But if you had some spiritual question, then he would become the guru. He would take off his Clark Kent suit and become Superman. He'd preach very strongly. And I saw him giving lectures to thousands of people in a large tent, the size of a circus tent. Tens of thousands of people would listen, and he would preach very, very forcefully, very strongly. And he was very critical. But the people knew he was telling the truth, and they loved it. And I saw Prabhupada in all kinds of different situations like that. So that was a very special thing to be able to see how a pure devotee acts. The spiritual master is the representative of Krishna. He's a fully surrendered soul to Krishna. So he doesn't do anything that Krishna doesn't indicate. He will not say anything, he will not do anything that is not inspired or told directly by Krishna. So as a liberated person, as a pure devotee, he doesn't make mistakes. He's not an illusion. His senses are not imperfect, and he doesn't cheat. He's the direct representative of God. He's as good as God, but he's not God. So that's the situation of the founder of the Hare Krishna movement. He created a perfect society. We have problems. We have conditioned souls like myself and others who are not perfect, but engaged in a perfect spiritual organization. That's what ISKCON is, the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. Have we had our problems? Yes. Are we still experiencing these problems? Yes. But is the organization intact? Yes. It's a spiritual organization. This is Lord Chaitanya's movement. This is the branch of Lord Chaitanya's movement. So as long as we strictly follow the instructions of Srila Prabhupada, then it will go on. But if we become lax, we start breaking the principles, taking drugs or other things, intoxication, then it'll hamper the movement. And then it'll have to grow from somewhere else. So I've dedicated my life to this, okay? There is nothing else out there. The only thing else out there is sense gratification, right? How to have more sex, more intoxication, running after money, right? And what if it doesn't happen? What if our whole society collapses? Then what? Then you have nothing. And what to speak if you die? But if you do devotional service, if you hear and chant and read the books, then you're well on your way. And as much advancement as you make in this life, you can continue in the next life. You don't lose anything. But if you are a sense gratifier and you don't care for hearing about God and you don't have any interest, you run the risk of ruining yourself. You may not get an opportunity for this for a long, long, long time. It is extremely rare to come in contact with a pure devotee of God. The Christians are waiting for 2,000 years. What they didn't realize is that their real Jesus did come, and they missed it. I'm not saying Prabhupada is Jesus, but had they understood who Jesus really was, they would understand who Srila Prabhupada is. Representative of God, on the same level of God, speaking what God would speak if he were walking around on the earth, like he did 5,000 years ago. So Srila Prabhupada is what we call the external representative of the supersoul. Within every one of us, we have God in our heart, but we're not that. We're not God. But within us, there is Krishna, the representation of Krishna, called the supersoul. The same supersoul is in me, is in you, is in everyone. Every living being has the supersoul. But we don't hear the supersoul because we're too conditioned, we're too offensive. So Krishna sends his representative. The external representative of Krishna is the guru, the spiritual master. And Srila Prabhupada is that representative. And he's telling us what the supersoul would tell us if we could hear him. That's the point. So we are in direct contact with Krishna through the spiritual master. And it's not like, the telephone game where, you whisper something to me and I mishear it and I tell somebody else something different. And by the time it goes around, the message is completely lost. The spiritual master has been there and done that. He's walked the talk. He's been on the path. He's been there. And he's simply, by personal experience, giving us the same information, right? It's not like a telephone game. And the difference, unfortunately, Jesus didn't write any scriptures. He didn't write anything as far as I know. But Srila Prabhupada wrote many, many books. And he wasn't just, off the top of his head, self-made, but simply presenting what he heard from his spiritual master, who heard it from his spiritual master and realized it. And so going back to the original, the personality of Godhead is telling us the same thing. If Krishna says, surrender to me, Prabhupada is saying, surrender to Krishna. There's no difference. He's not telling us something to do that he didn't do, right? Do as I say, but don't do what I do. He wasn't like that. He never fell down. He could be in a room with every Miss Universe that ever existed and not be the least bit agitated. That's amazing. Okay? He was in the world, but not of the world. Okay? And there were many times that Prabhupada could see things and understood things that we couldn't figure out how he knew. So how was that possible? Because he wasn't relying on his senses. He was only seeing everything through the eyes of Scripture. And so without cheating, without making mistakes, without being an illusion, he could actually transmit the absolute truth without changing anything. And that's a tall order because we're all conditioned. I'm conditioned. Unless you're a pure devotee, you're conditioned. And a conditioned soul cannot understand the absolute truth fully. To a certain extent, you can. But beyond that, we have to have faith. Okay? So if you say, well, we don't need faith, right? I can believe anything I want. Okay. How do you know E equals MC squared? They built bombs on it. They've done all kinds of things with radioactivity and all of these information they're getting from Albert Einstein, right? So you don't know. You have to have faith. You can't live without faith. You have to have faith that when you put your foot down, the ground's not going to crumble under your feet. You can't live without faith. If someone says, oh, I don't believe in scriptures, I don't believe in this, I don't believe in that, well, that's your misfortune. Because if you want to know something, you have to have faith that what you're hearing is the proper thing. So on one hand, you have to find somebody who's going to give you the straight scoop. You can't just go to anybody, some Tom, Dick, and Harry, self-made guru, right? You don't know where he got the information, or he's getting information from unfortunately, for some, bogus guru, or there's no disciplic chain. Everything that we're saying is coming from disciplic succession. So that's very important. Okay. So this process is authorized. It's just like when you go to college. You can say, well, I don't need to go to college. I can just go to the bookstore and read all the books. Well, are you going to get a diploma? Is anyone going to recognize you? If you don't get a medical license, are you going to be able to practice medicine? I don't think so. So this is authorized. This is not something that we're just making up. And there have been great sages and saints who've done this thousands of years ago and up to the present day. So it's not that we're coming up with something new or concocted something and we're some cult that, or being indoctrinated and brainwashed or something like that. Okay. This is bona fide. This is going back thousands and thousands of years. It's just that in the West, we weren't aware of it. And now Srila Prabhupada has come uninvited, came over on a little steamer, almost died, came here, had no money, moved to New York and lived in the Bowery, and started the Hare Krishna movement, and in 12 years became a household word by himself. It's unbelievable, unbelievable. And I was fortunate to have some association. I was not a very important devotee, didn't do very much, just trying to assist whoever's there. So, are you tired yet?
We have still 8 people watching.
Okay, well.
So Prabhu, there is one devotee who asked a question. Jamin with Yarn, I don't know who is that devotee. Did Jesus come from the heavenly place like an aviator or a human being that became enlightened?
Did Jesus come down from an airplane or something like that?
Did Jesus come from the heavenly place like an aviator or a human being that became enlightened?
As far as I know, here's the explanation. Jesus was not an ordinary person, just like Srila Prabhupada was not an ordinary person, as far as I understand it. From some histories, it is said that Jesus went to India and he had some association with some of the pundits or some of the scholars, some people in India. But as far as I understand it, he was not an ordinary person. He came here. Now, how he got here, coming as an aviator, I've never heard that narrative. But as I understand it, there are certain souls that take birth who are pure devotees from birth. They are self-realized from birth. And they didn't have to undergo a process to attain perfection. But there is a category of people who have come here because they had some karma to work off. And they are, if you undergo the process of chanting and the process of Krishna consciousness, with what I'm talking about, you can become a perfected person. And then it doesn't matter whether or not you were born as an ordinary person. If you reach the perfection, it's understood that you're in the first category. You're as good as someone who came pure from birth. So Srila Prabhupada is understood that when he came here, he didn't come because he had some bad karma to work off. He came with a mission. And he never fell down. He never ate meat, got intoxicated, or had illicit sex, or gambled. He never did any sinful activities. And he was a pure devotee, even from a very young age. It was obvious from a very, very young age that he was someone extraordinary. So as far as the Jesus, I don't know all the history, but as I understand it, he took birth and was pure from his birth. I can't corroborate that, but that's what I understand. Now, is it possible for someone to come in a spaceship? Well, that's a whole nother story. And UFOs and these kinds of things exist, and they've been existed for thousands and millions of years. Okay, there are a race of people who are called demons. And these demons are very powerful. And they have these kinds of spaceships and UFOs and such things. And they have been coming to Earth for a long, long time. 5,000 years ago, there are descriptions of the same kind of things that are reported nowadays. So whether he came in a spaceship or something like that, I can't say. I doubt it. So I hope that answers the question. Anything else?
No. She said, I think her name is Srila. She said, thank you.
Gotcha. Well, I thank you for listening if you've come this far. If you're still listening, I'm flattered. Thank you. Thank you. Jai Srila Prabhupada. There's one picture here, you see. And Srila Prabhupada. That picture was the first time that I saw Srila Prabhupada in Vrindavan. He was giving lectures. So that's 1972, that's the first time I saw him. He gave some very famous lectures at that time. So anyway. Anything else? That's it.
No, that's it probably.
Okay, Prabhu. Thank you very much. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Thank you for your association. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Pavana Prabhu.